Hi there. This week's reading focuses on the argument strategies used by right-wing public intellectuals, journalists, and political figures to delegitimize the controversy surrounding racialized police violence. So this starts in the summer of 2020 when protests happened across the U.S. after the killing of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police. It was a very large protest with many people engaging in it, not just in cities, but online too in social media. And there was a huge controversy that came from it surrounding, is this really true, racialized police crime, or is it just something made up? And that is what this article really focuses on, how certain individuals on the right created the idea that no, this is not a problem, even though there is a lot of data to prove that it is. So one example is Major Travis Yates of the Tulsa, Oklahoma Police Department. He went on a radio show that was local, and he aimed to explain the data that African Americans are 2.5 times more likely to be fatally shot by the police was, in quotes, insanity, and activists did not make sense to him. He even stated that they were shooting 24% less than they probably should, according to this one study. And this line of thinking was used by many defenders who were against racial bias, and they used the idea of technical expertise in data to support their claims. So the idea of technical expertise is what I would say data and numbers that we typically see as more logical than facts. When someone tells us an opinion, we don't really tend to agree with them, but if someone gives us a number, we are far more likely to agree with them, which is what these people used. So there is a lack of data results from inconsistent federal tracking efforts. There is no national database, and the FBI's database relies only on data fed from the police themselves, which in one study it was estimated that only 40% of departments comply, which leads to many fatal shootings not being reported. So as you can see, the official data is not very trustworthy because it doesn't really count all the data. And you can argue that what is reported could be biased because it is coming from the police themselves, which is what we are focusing on. So you have researchers, journalists, and activists who are attempting to fill this void of data that tracks police homicides. So one of them is the Washington Post, which created a database called Fatal Force, and The Guardian, another outlet, also created something called The Counted. These use information from journalistic outlets and social media to create databases that track police homicides. There are also organizations that do the same thing, like the Center for Police Equity, Fatal Encounters, and Mapping Police Violence. Studies have found that racialized groups are subject to disproportionate stops, arrests, and convictions and rates of incarceration higher than other groups. These studies have also found that black people are far more likely to encounter police officers than white people, but are actually far less likely to produce actual evidence. One study found that black people were 3.49 times more likely to be shot than a white person. But people who are against the police being racist do not like any of this data, and so you have right-wing platforms help circulate this idea that the police are actually not racially biased, and they do this through expert opinions to establish that there is no problem. And these expert opinions come from supposed experts, people with a perceived background of knowledge. Despite all this, though, they actually fail to produce evidence that shows the police are not racially biased. And one of them actually contends the idea that black culture is the major problem here, not the police. But what this line of thinking does is it deflects blame or the problem away from the police. And something really interesting I found is defenders, people who are against saying the idea that the police are racist, actually only cite the same 4 studies, and these 4 studies tend to be misrepresented and misused. And of course, people cherry pick and omit key details to show that their view is right or correct. So when you consider the lack of true evidence and data, you can see a lot of misrepresented data can be used to create a narrative. There's also the idea of if it's something true, if it cannot be proven false a lot, or something else has yet to be true, then the opposing side must be right. And these ideas are used by the right-wing outlets to push back on the police being racist or the idea of the police being racist. So as you can see, the right has been able to shift the discussion of racially biased policing to a technical matter, technical matter being numbers and data. And this has allowed racist logic to be accepted through technical means. And because the research is so complex, because the matter itself is so complex, this allows people to create technical answers to give the illusion of a fact, even though it's not true itself. And I think this entire article can be applied to so many things, and it really just shows how arguments are created through the means of technical ideas instead of actual hard evidence. Thank you for listening and have a good day.